Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mission Yozakura Family Season 1, Episode 5. Great episode, a fun episode in general. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, obviously, immediately getting to some of the questions I had, and it's interesting, because obviously we get introduced to Hotokiyama, which I was like, oh, you are a detective. Because, like, looking at him in the intro, I'm like, that character looks like kind of like he looks like a detective character. So it is kind of, once again, I didn't know there would be a detective character, but I was like, oh, considering all the stuff that the spies get into, I'm like, it would be interesting to have a detective look into stuff, and we have this guy who was looking into stuff, and it also immediately answered my question of why does he go after specifically Taiyo? Because I was like, once again, he was mixed up with that whole situation last episode, Shinzo's mission, but I was like, why wouldn't you focus on Shinzo? Why Taiyo? But apparently Taiyo, apparently a photo of his went like crazy on the internet, in the dark web. So I was like, right, I guess Shinzo never got caught on camera or whatever. But I was like, that did seem weird. But this guy, especially as we spent more time with him, I was like, is this guy actually a detective? Or is he just kind of like an anti-hero detective type of thing of like, oh yeah, I do the justice side of things, but those who fall outside the lines of justice, I handle it myself. Because it's like, oh, here's these bags, which we never actually got clarification whether those bags were actually filled with drug dealers. I mean, we saw him hammer covered in blood, not covered, but at least had blood on it last episode. He's threatening to break every bone in home dude's limb and stuff. So he might already naturally go that line, and maybe that's why his circumstances are what they are. But him trying to, I love the whole trying to dump some truth. It's like, wait, that's truth serum you're putting in that water. He's like, what? No, they're minerals. They're good for you. It's like, that's such a half-ass line, jammed it down his throat. It's like, Jesus. I was like, because that's what I'm like, are you actually a detective? Were you lying? Is this whole, even though we know that they said you're at the precinct, that could still be a lie. But I love that, water balloon thing, too, of, oh, yeah, it's meant to capture, it's meant for, magic tricks and stuff like that. But it's captured all the liquid. I was like, oh, that's pretty impressive. But yeah, he's going hard into pain against Taiyo. But then Taiyo saw Kishiro's wire, one of his threads. I interpreted that completely different. I'm like, oh, Kishiro's here. It's supposed to be a sign that he's backing you up. But I think it was also I think in that moment, Taiyo was like, wait, something's up here. And it turns out this whole thing was a ploy. Hiding behind the wall, Kishiro was, he had set this up because him and Hotokiyama, Seiji, go back from junior high. We don't know if they go beyond that or not, because all he said was he said we know each other in junior high, but I don't know if they went to the same high school and stuff like that. But it's yeah, he helps out from time to time. We help him with his detective work. He ends up helping us with the spy stuff. In fact, he's the one that actually helps cover up the Yozakura family stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, so it's not what I thought it was, but it is yeah, he helps. He's the one that helps cover stuff up so that it never gets too much of the general public or police attention, because he did know a lot despite the Yozakura family's covering stuff up, because you're like, right, he knows about the shootout, even though that was literally in episode 2 and we hadn't heard anything about that, and that was well over a month ago, because his training happened in episode 3, and that was over the course of a month. So it's we hadn't heard hide nor hair until then, but it's well, sometimes cops wait until they've gathered more and more evidence. But it's it seemed really, really suspicious. But yeah, that turns out what this is all about. So it's a two-way street relationship they have with Hotokiyama. So I was like, oh, that's an interesting. Once again, I wasn't expecting that character to be that way. He definitely gives off L vibes too, but it's also because the dark circles under his eye. Which, I mean, L was a detective in his own right. Specifically, I'm referencing L from obviously Death Note. I wonder when I say L. Well, I mean, it's well, I could also be talking about Stranger Things, L 11, but when you say L in anime, I can only assume you associate it with. I mean, I guess that also depends on your brain. When you hear L, what do you think of first? Do you think of 11, or do you think of L from Death Note? I think of L from Death Note, but it's just me, because obviously that predates Stranger Things by quite a bit. But either way, tangents and all that aside. So that's one half of the episode, and it's just kind of cool. Had to deal with that interrogation, kind of being stressed out, because obviously he didn't want to turn on his family, and it showed that he was very ride or die, that he wasn't going to give up any information. But yeah, next day have to go to school, and he's trying not to let Mitsumi know about it because he's like, don't worry about it. And then lo and behold, Kiyashiro shows up because he's like, oh yeah, I've got another mission I got to get ready for, and it's him taking over the class. And that whole sequence is so great because it's like Taiyo is like drifting off, and then you have Kiyashiro throwing chalk at him at the speed of sound. I love how that was animated. It's just like it's spiraling and spinning so close, it's literally cutting his hair, and he dodges it like it was like freaking cannonball. And then like the whole rest of the scene is like done in like Morse code. I love it. And Mitsumi gets in on it too because she's like, I've been living in a spy family for 17 years, so of course I know Morse code too. And Kiyoshiro's like, oh my god, my sis having a conversation with me. It's because you love your big brother so much. Like, oh, I could just gobble you up. Just kidding. It's like, I love that all this is happening. I'm like, no one else in class is picking this up, but I guess it's like maybe he's doing it so fast that, I mean, once again, you're tapping on a chalkboard, so people are just thinking you're writing, but like, no one's like, yo, he hasn't really written anything in a while. He's just tapping. Wait, why is Mitsumi and Taiyo tapping too? It's like, I guess you wouldn't think much of it, but I love, once again, just exploring the spy craft stuff, because it's like, oh, when did Taiyo pick up, it's like one of those in-between things of like, yeah, it's a thing, it's a skill. To be fair, he's been training for like a month. Who knows what else small things he's kind of picked up from the other Yosakuras over time and stuff. Because it feels like this is the first time Kiyashiro has had anything to do with Taiyo's training, because like pretty much every other siblings had something to do with his training except for Kiyashiro, except in this moment. So, but it's like, yeah, you gotta learn how to basically shut off half your brain like birds. Like, what was it? Migrating birds and dolphins have the ability to, like, keep themselves in, like, a half-awake state. That way you're always a little attentive. Like, you got to get used to that no matter how tired you are. It's like, oh, I mastered that at 15. So, and now he wants Taiyo to do that. And he basically sets off, like, a sleeping powder from Nano, and it knocks out everyone in the class except for Mitsumi because she came prepared, because she always keeps a gas mask on. It's like, once again, nothing should surprise you, because it's like, right, everything, you have to be ready for any and everything. So either way, it seems like Taiyo got knocked out because he was already drifting, and then all the chalk comes flying to him, and then he shoots, and you're like, oh, and Mitsumi's like, oh my god, he's awake, but it's like, no, he already entered the half-awake state, and just in that moment, he's just like shooting every bit of chalk, which I didn't talk about that last episode. I like that he has so his gun, it kind of reminds me of, I haven't seen it in so long. Oh god, I don't even remember what the character's name is. It's 13 from the syndicate that he was a part of, but Black Cat, if you've ever seen like the anime or read the manga. I feel like it's more of a thing in the manga than it is the anime, but he has like a power shot thing that it kind of reminds me of. Like he has like a special shot with his gun. Because there's special, like, I think it's in the anime too, but, like, there are limitations on it more in the manga than they are in the anime, if I remember correctly. It's been so long since I've seen Black Cat, so I don't remember. But it kind of reminds me of that. I mean, there's plenty of, like, power shot guns and stuff like that. So it's not that big of a surprise, but it's like, yeah, the fact is that's, once again, I was wondering what Taiyo's saying was. It's like, right, he's just going to have naturally extremely powerful skills, but also, like, the gun is going to be kind of, like, his main thing. It's like an electro, like, gun. Because it does serve, like, stunning purposes, so it's not meant to kill. It is more self-defense than an offensive weapon. It can be used offensively, but it's more self-defense than anything. I just completely forgot to talk about that last episode. But, yeah, and Mitsumi's only takeaway from this is, man, Taiyo is becoming less and less human, becoming more and more superhuman, which is kind of like, it's not like a bad thing, it's just kind of like, well, yeah, but it's also like, oh, yeah, just, like, yeah, like, the Yosakuras is one thing, because it's like, right, it's in their genes to become superhuman, but now it's like, oh, man, my regular Taiyo that I've known for so long, it's like, wow, I'm just becoming less and less human. But also I love, and I'm so curious to see if this continues to be a thing. Him being in a half state was kind of like a fluke, but it also brought up something else. He now sleepwalks. So I'm wondering, is that going to be a permanent thing for the rest of the series? It'll probably be a gag they turn back to every once in a while, but it's just kind of, and I also love that Shinzo was freaking out like, oh my god. I guess Taiyo just, because he's also a ninja, so he's super quiet and he's sleepwalking in the middle of the night. So we have that. But I also love the other half of the episode. I mean, it's actually kind of almost like 2/3 of like 3/3 of an episode. Like it's almost split in three, even though it's like technically split into two. Because I guess that technically all counted as part of like the interrogation side of the episode. But Taiyo is now worried because he's like, okay, him and Mutsumi, like he's kind of worried about things kind of falling. I mean, to be fair, once again, it's all tied together, even though the episode's kind of split like that. I mean, it's still all tied together because the opening of this where Taiyo runs into Hotayama, it's like, yeah, him and Mutsumi were on the phone talking about the Ferris wheel stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, a couple that got into a fight and then they were kind of good after this Ferris wheel thing. So you have Taiyo wanting to spend more time with Mutsumi, like, because he's like worried, because he's like, right, 90% of spy divorces, because he's reading a book saying, like, not saying that 90% of spies get divorced, it's just that though of those who do get divorced, 90% of them was just because of, like, you know, him wanting, what was it, kind of like, almost getting overworked and stuff like that, and basically not making enough time for each other ended up being the thing. And so he wanted to try and make more time with Mutsumi, but Hotakeyama called up about like, yeah, I need you to work a job for me, go to the amusement park, find this suspicious couple. And he's like, oh, I've got to look for someone odd, but the odd person is him. I even love the kid being like, oh my god, and mom, that guy's all alone. It kind of gives me the same energy of Viral Hit, where the little kid's like, mom, that guy's swimming back and forth, or like his thing is out, or something like that, or like stuff like that. Like while Hoban was training, it kind of gives me that same energy. I wasn't expecting Mutsumi to show up the way she did, because she's like, no, I got the lowdown from Hotakeyama, and I wanted to, you know, help out. You know, for one, it like makes you look less suspicious, which I'm like, could have been anyone part of the family. Like, could have even been Kingo, like in disguise, coming here or something like that. Could have easily been like Shion or Futaba. But I guess it's like, this probably wouldn't be their scene. Plus, Mutsumi probably made that decision unilaterally. Probably can't really go too against the head of the family when she makes a decision like that. But Taiyo looks at this like, oh, cool, it's an opportunity. I'm also doing a mission, but I get to spend time with Mutsumi, and all his attempts to kind of like, do the typical date thing. He's like, oh yeah, those pants must be so flexible. You must be able to do a lot of kicks. And she's like, yeah, they're really comfortable to move around. He's like, oh, you're just placating me. And it's like, oh, let's go on this roller coaster ride or whatever. And it's like, well, because of the swaying of it and just like all the intense training I've been through, I kind of passed out during it. Like the little almost like spin cup thing they were doing, he was really getting into it, but her hair was covering her eyes, so she couldn't see. It's just like every time he was trying to do something, it just didn't work out, and it's just kind of making him like feel like, oh man, I'm failing. Like all my attempts to kind of woo Mutsumi, because at the same time they're following different couples they're suspicious of. I figured it was going to be Ken and Muchi, because it's like, right, they're too lovey-dovey, and it's just kind of disgusting. But it's actually really sweet with the first couple, because they look so like alternative and punk, that it's like he wasn't really good with the roller coaster, and she's like, no, it's fine, it's good. And then they like touch fingers a little bit, and they both slide to different ends of the bench. It's like, that's super adorable. And then the muscle bound group, it's like, oh, no centrifugal force is going to pull us apart, and then they kiss while they're there. Then there's the couple in the suits, and I love that Taiyo's thinking like, oh, he's about to pull out something, and he pulls out a ring, and it's like, will you marry me? She adjusts her glasses, like, yes. And they're just so matter of fact about it. I was like, okay, so that didn't work out. And like I said, it ends up being Ken and Muchi. They seem like such a tumultuous couple, because it's like, right, they're there for illegal arms and stuff, but the problem is that they are lovey-dovey, but they had a fight, which couples do. So it's like, they seem like they're the extreme, like, oh, we really, really in love, and another time we're the other end of the spectrum where we downright hate each other. So they started popping off, and then basically everyone had to run for their lives because bullets were flying. Taiyo got really pissed because part of the flower got shot, the one he had gotten from Mutsumi, thinking it'd be kind of like a good gift, you know, really something nice for a couple to give to his SO. And yeah, Taiyo popped off on him, and as they're being taken away, it's like, but I wanted to ride the Ferris wheel with Ken, and Muchi's like, oh, like, no, that's what Muchi says, and then Ken's like, yo, like, just give us a little bit of time to see the sunset together as they're getting taken away. But Mutsumi and Taiyo are able to be because I think specifically, I think she says like, you have to be the last couple to see the a sunset on the Ferris wheel. You can't just be a couple on the Ferris wheel. You have to be the last ones, and they're able to see it together. And you know, this is what, because she's like, yeah, once you have this, you'll be it's kind of like a legend or thing of like, oh, you'll be happy together, kind of forever thing. And Tayo gives her the flower, and she's kind of taken aback by it. He's like, oh, do you not? And she's like, no, it's just, she's like, I wasn't expecting you to be the type, like because I guess like she wasn't expecting like Tayo to be like the romantic type, because it feels like this is the first time like there's really been like the push, like they've always been close, but I think it's that type of thing that Tayo's probably thinking like, right, like I haven't really displayed like how I really, like I've made it clear, but I haven't really continued, you know. Once again, you always got to date your significant other. Like, no matter how far into the relationship, it's important to kind of make moments special. You got to make moments, you know, you got to date and stuff like that. Always date your SO. So that's really sweet, and that to kind of be the last shot of the episode. Also, before that, you know, Kishiro is like literally biting on his threads because he's upset, being like, yo, Hotakeyama gave them a mission at an amusement park, and he's flipping out, and just Shion's ignoring him, just being like, oh, I'm hungry. So just a very sweet, another sweet episode, just a lot of fun episode in general. So a little dark at the beginning with the interrogation stuff, but generally speaking, ends up being kind of a sweet episode in the end. So, but yeah, that really is all I wanted to talk about. I'm excited to see where the next episode ultimately ends up taking us going forward with all of this. One of the other characters we see in the intro, at least she's in the little promo thing of like, oh, which I haven't talked about those. Like I said, I like how those aesthetically are too. Kind of that pixelated art they have. Seems like we might get an introduction to her. Seems like based on the intro, she has an infatuation with someone, and I'd assume, I doubt it's going to be Tayo. I'm sure it's going to be Mitsumi. I think she's going to be in love with Mitsumi, but we'll have to wait to see how that turns out, what that ends up being. But yeah, I'm sure like everyone we've seen in the intro will eventually be like characters we get introduced to in this section of the anime, but we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.